So next we have Christy, who's the director of the EOS Foundation. And for those of you who work for schools here in the area, I'm sure you have some programs that are linked to the EOS Foundation. So Christy, why don't you come on up and tell us about what you're doing?
Thank you, and good afternoon. EOS is really pleased to be here today to talk about breakfast in the classroom as another model for change within the school food system. We want to start by thanking you again, Louisa and Jody. Let's talk about food, and David and Harvard Dining Services for hosting this great event. It's been for imagining this great event and pulling it together. As I said, EOS is happy to be a sponsor of the event, and in addition to thanking our hosts, I really want to thank the food service directors in the room. You know, you work tirelessly, you are so committed to your jobs. And Mara, you asked why we do this work. Well, the personal answer is I was a poor kid, and I relied on school meals, and I relied on your hard work and energy. And whether you work in a Lawrence or an Andover, two very different demographics of schools, you've got poor kids that you're feeding each and every day. You're the unsung heroes oftentimes within school food, well, not within school food, but within your districts, and I just personally want to thank you. So, moving on to professionally why I do this work, the EOS Foundation, for those of you who may know us, for those of you who don't, we are a small private family foundation, do a lot of funding in the anti-hunger space, and we are longtime funders of the food banks, all the major food banks in Massachusetts, of organizations like Project Bread, the great annual Walk for Hunger. We fund the Food Project, which hosts Food Corps. Nationally, we fund the Food Research and Action Center, FRAC, which many of you know, and Share Our Strength, to name a few. And it's from the history of that funding that our trustees 4 or 5 years ago now turned to us and asked, how can we complement that funding and make a significant and sustainable difference on hunger in Massachusetts? We didn't know the answer at the time. We had some ideas, but we set out to learn. And we traveled to some states that had taken on ambitious anti-hunger campaigns. We traveled to Colorado, we met with Chafan. We traveled to Maryland, we traveled to Connecticut. And all conversations led to breakfast in the classroom. So we came back home, and we did a little more research. Foundations like to do research. And we learned that Massachusetts actually ranks 44th out of 50 states in the District of Columbia in breakfast participation. Let that sink in a minute. 44th out of 50 states. We're near the bottom of the pack. We like to think of ourselves as leaders, and we're not leading in this space. And collectively, because of that low participation, we're leaving about $25 million of USDA reimbursables on the table. We're living in some tough financial times. We can't afford to be leaving that money on the table. We then commissioned some work with Noah Burger Shop, the Mass Budget and Policy Center, which many of you may know. And they helped identify that in high poverty schools, which we define as those with 60% or higher free and reduced student populations, lunch participation is about 80%, maybe a little higher, but breakfast participation is lagging. It's 35, 40%, if that. So we stopped and we asked ourselves the question, why? And the delivery method is the answer. Again, all conversations lead to breakfast in the classroom. Lunch is part of the school day. We may only have 20 minutes, but we have 20 dedicated minutes to eat lunch every day. These are hungry kids, they're high poverty schools, they're eating lunch at 80%. That same population, we know they're hungry, they're only eating breakfast at 40%. Why is that? Because breakfast in the majority of our schools in Massachusetts is still offered before the bell and in the cafeteria. And there are barriers to getting there. Stigma. Everybody knows that only the poor kids eat breakfast. There might be some logistical challenges, the location of when you walk in the room, the building versus where the cafeteria is. And I'd say mostly kids want to hang out with their friends. In these days of testing and time on task, there's little time to actually engage in free play. So there are a lot of barriers. And putting that all together, you know, we sort of stepped back and said to our trustees, 44th ranking out of 50 states means thousands of kids every day, today, this morning, are not eating breakfast in Massachusetts. We feel a great sense of urgency to do something about that. And that $25 million, again, in these tough budget times, is just a missed opportunity. So there's an opportunity for us to significantly boost participation because of our ranking, and to make it sustainable because those meals are reimbursable with USDA dollars. For those of you who know us, you know we are on a mission to expand this program, Universal Free After the Bell, Breakfast in the Classroom, or BIC, in the majority, if not all, of the low-income schools in Massachusetts. We estimate there to be about 600 of them in about 85 districts, including the charter, independent charter districts. We think about 100 of the schools, in the state are already doing breakfast in the classroom, which leaves 500. And we invite partnerships. We're partnering with many of you in the room, and for those of you that we're not yet in conversation with, we hope this is a starter for that conversation. I think it's always helpful to take a look at an example. Early on, when we were traveling nationally, we came across Maura O'Malley, who is an accomplished food service director in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And when we met her, we learned that Bridgeport was serving breakfast in the classroom to all 28 K-8 schools in the district. Didn't happen overnight, but it started with a pilot, and we set out to learn more. So Maura was at a conference like this. She heard about breakfast in the classroom as a potential model for change for her food service department, and she engaged in conversation with some principals. And one principal said, yes, I'll try that pilot. It was a principal who, the majority of her students were coming from a housing development. They were walking. Oh, and by the way, there was a bodega at the bottom of the hill the kids were walking up every morning, and the principal saw the kids buying the soda and the chips, not eating school breakfast that had been offered. So she said, I'm willing to change things. Let's make it happen. And they spent the time to engage all relevant stakeholders in the school building. They spoke with the custodian, they spoke with the cafeteria workers, they spoke with the teachers, and they introduced this as a pilot. With that planning, they rolled out the program, and within a day, but certainly by the end of the week, participation rates rose from 30% breakfast in the cafeteria before the bell to 90% after the bell in the classroom, which is just a phenomenal model of change for those kids. And they're eating healthful meals. They're not eating the chips and the sodas anymore. So we thought that was really inspiring. Looking at the bottom line, Maura said that over the course of the 4 years that it took her to roll this out district-wide, her reimbursements went from $1.3 million to $4.5 million. That's a $3 million increase in the period of 4 years. And we said, you know what? If Maura can do this in Bridgeport, there's no reason that districts across Massachusetts can't do it here. And that's what we fund. So from a financial perspective, we think breakfast in the classroom is a no-brainer and a silver bullet if you want to help have a healthy FNS budget. The academic and social benefits of breakfast in the classroom are also very well documented. Attendance improves, tardiness goes down, nurses' visits in the morning go down, disciplinary referrals go down. Test scores, interestingly, go up, right? Students are focused. I have the unenviable task of offering a presentation right before lunch. I bet you're hungry. It's probably hard to pay attention to what I'm saying. That's how thousands of kids in this state this morning felt as their teachers were trying to teach them math, right, and reading, things that they're going to get tested on. Breakfast in the classroom is a no-brainer, and it is a silver bullet. Financially, academically, and morally, it's the right thing to do. Bringing it back to Massachusetts, in a couple of weeks, we are going to kick off our next cohort of schools. Starting in September, that will mark the third school year that we'll be funding in Massachusetts. We'll be working in a total, and I should say partnering in a total of 20 districts, over 50 schools, reaching over 25,000 kids, bringing down just these past 2 years over $1 million in increased reimbursements because of the partnerships that we have with Deb Jeffers from Salem and Donna Lombardi from Worcester, just to name a few. We plan to continue to fund. So we offer up to $12,500 per school as a one-time startup grant. to help buy the equipment that you need to roll the breakfast into the classroom, to cover some additional labor costs that you might incur, and incentives are actually a really big one, because we know that it takes a school building, the custodian, the cafeteria staff, the teachers, the principal, all on board to make this happen. So on the one hand, we offer this this grant fund to start up your grant program, and then recognizing that it takes all folks pulling in the same direction. Every spring, we offer a Healthy Start Award to schools that have reached and maintained over 80% breakfast participation in their schools. We offer them a $500 unrestricted grant. It's not a lot of money, but it is something that schools don't have. We have a nice event at the State House where they're recognized by their legislators and among their peers. And it's really, for us, gets to that sustainability piece. It's a little bit of a carrot, right? You've got there, now let's keep you there. You won this award this year. Oh, and by the way, you can win it next year, and you can win it the year after that. So every year we run this program, a school will be eligible. In the first year, we recognized 30 schools. This past April, we recognized 53. With your help, I hope that number, mushrooms for next year. So in terms of next steps, for those of you that work in or have connections with low-income schools, connect with us. Breakfast in the classroom really is a model that works for schools that have a 60% or higher free and reduced population, so it might not work in Brookline. But it will work in, as I said, 85 other districts across the state, and we're just now making some strong inroads. I invite you to contact me. I'll have some handouts on breakfast in the classroom in the back here. And I should say that once we partner on breakfast in the classroom as an important model, we're also looking into some of the other topics that folks have talked about today, summer meals and after-school snacks, which are other opportunities to significantly and sustainably impact hunger for our kids in Massachusetts. So, thank you.
It's huge work you're doing. I loved hearing about that. So one last question. What would you say is the biggest hurdle that you hear from food service or schools about implementing breakfast in the classroom after the bell, and what's your response to it?
Yeah, I think one of the hurdles is people don't know what it looks like. I should have, next time we'll have a video. That's a big hurdle. They don't understand how you can move all of the food components from the cafeteria into the classroom. So really walking folks through, and I thought about bringing the props here this morning, but the commute on the train, wasn't going to really do it. So I think having them speak with their peers really helps allay fears and debunk myths.
Great. Well, I hope you get to the rest of the 500. And I just want to thank you guys for going to work every day and for doing what you do, along with everyone in the room. But you guys really are models for change, and I think the whole movement has been pushed forward from the work that you do. So thank you. And yeah, I'm going to talk about that.